If you are one of the 70-plus countries in the world who change their clocks twice a year, you may have asked, or been asked, why? This question is usually met with vague answers like, I think it's for the farmers. But why do we voluntarily give ourselves jet lag twice a year? And when did we start doing it? In this video, we'll explore how the practice came about, which countries adopted this method, and if it is still necessary today. There is an enduring legend that when a Native American was told the reason for daylight savings time, he remarked, "Only a white man would believe you could cut the foot off the top of the blanket, sew it onto the bottom of the blanket, and you'd be left with more blanket." The quote is popular amongst those who are irked by the biannual clock changing. After all, it doesn't account for the fact there are more hours of daylight in the summer than in the winter. So why change the time if we can't put more hours into the day? Well, it wasn't always the case that time was a set notion, and in ancient Rome, they did, in fact, make the days longer in the summer. Just as we do, the Romans divided each day into 24 units, but instead of being equal, the Roman 24-hour day was made up of 12 hours of dark and 12 hours of light. As they divided the hours of sunlight into 12 all year round, a Roman hour during daylight would last 75 minutes during midsummer and just 45 minutes in midwinter. The changing length in hours was gradual and would even out during the equinox when the day and night were roughly the same length. In this way, the Romans maximized the working day during the summer and took advantage of the extra downtime in the winter. American scientist and statesman Benjamin Franklin first planted the seed for modern daylight savings time. While living in Paris during the summer in the late 18th century, he noticed how he would often stay in bed after sunrise, and in 1784, he mused about how many candles people could save by waking up and getting their tasks done early to make total use of the extended days. However, at that time, it had little to do with clocks, as people were used to resetting their watches to local time. Clock synchronization did not happen until the 1830s with the introduction of the electric telegraph. Franklin's solution was to fire cannons in each square as the sun rose to wake up the sluggards effectually and make them open their eyes to see their true interest. So, for those night owls that dread the clocks springing forward, it could have been a lot worse. Nearly 100 years later, in 1895, an amateur New Zealand entomologist and professional postman, George Hudson, lamented his lack of time during the day to dedicate to hunting bugs. He proposed that the clock should be changed by 2 hours in the summertime to allow more daylight for leisure time in the evening. He also argued that this would save on the use of artificial light and greatly benefit the numerous classes who are obliged to work indoors all day and who, under existing arrangements, get a minimum of fresh air and sunshine. Although some agreed with his suggestion, it was mostly met with ridicule. In 1862, the Prince of Wales and future King Edward VII purchased the Sandringham estate in Norfolk as a retreat from London, as he wanted a place he could enjoy his hobby of hunting. One of his main leisure pursuits was shooting. To make the most of the winter daylight, he invented Sandringham time, instructing that the clocks on his Sandringham estate should be set to half an hour ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. The man who would finally realize the dream of forcing people to get up earlier in the summer lived in Chislehurst in southeast London. He was a builder named William Willet, and he loved to get up at the crack of dawn during the summer to go horse riding. One particularly glorious morning in 1905, Willet noticed that many people were still snoozing in bed with their curtains drawn to keep out the sunlight. Willet decided it would be much better for them to be up and about as he was, and decided that someone should do something about it. And so he did. By 1907, Willet had self-published a pamphlet entitled The Waste of Daylight, in which he proposed that the clock should be moved forward by 20-minute increments every week in April, and then reversed in the same way in September. He cited more time for recreational activities as well as lowering the cost of lighting as reasons for the change. Other early birds came flocking to support the idea, including politicians David Lloyd George and Winston Churchill, president of the Board of Trade at the time. Churchill gave an impassioned speech supporting daylight savings, declaring, "An extra yawn one morning in the springtime, an extra snooze one night in the autumn is all that we ask in return for dazzling gifts. We borrow an hour one night in April. We pay it back with golden interest 5 months later." Arthur Conan Doyle also supported the proposal, but although he agreed with the principle, Doyle disliked the idea of a gradual change, stating, "A single alteration of an hour would be a round number and cause less confusion." Although a bill to implement the time change was debated in Parliament, its opponents included British Prime Minister Herbert Asquith. and it received strong opposition from the farmers, who followed the sun and not the clock, and argued that a clock change would put them out of sync with the non-farming world. The bill was narrowly defeated in 1909. Willet continued to advocate for a summertime change until his death in 1915, just 1 year before daylight savings was finally implemented in the UK. On April 30, 1916, Germany became the first country to implement daylight savings time. It was well into the First World War, and Kaiser Wilhelm II hoped that by moving the clocks forward, the Germans could save much-needed coal by reducing the need for artificial lighting. By May 17th, the United Kingdom had decided to follow suit, and on Sunday, May 21st, the British changed their clocks for the first time. It wasn't long before France, Italy, Russia, and Australia wound their clocks forward. After America joined the war in 1918, they also adopted DST. Although America also cited fuel savings as the reason for the change, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was the major backer of the policy, causing some to argue that the change in time was to encourage Americans finishing work to make the most of evenings by indulging in some retail therapy. Recreational activities and sports certainly gained a boost from the change, with golf ball sales skyrocketing and baseball games enjoying a later start due to the lighter evenings. However, the movie industry hated the new time change, as people were less likely to want to sit in a dark theater when it was light outside. Farmers get a lot of flack about why we have daylight savings, but American farmers, like the British ones, felt it was detrimental to them as they had less time in the morning to collect milk and harvest crops ready to go to market. After the war, Germany ceased to use DST, but countries such as the United Kingdom and Ireland continued to change their clocks. Some countries were divided as to whether or not to keep DST. In France, the rural population didn't like it and abandoned it by 1920, whereas the major cities still benefited from the system and continued to use it. In 1923, the French cabinet decreed they would end the clock changes, but that working hours would start and stop 30 minutes earlier from the end of April to the start of November. The Parisians, however, refused to give up DST and continued the seasonal time change. New York City held on to the lighter summer evenings in America, but the surrounding rural areas did not. The chaotic time differences were exacerbated as each municipality chose if and when the clocks changed, causing confusion due to oscillating time changes. According to records, drivers on the bus route traveling from Steubenville, Ohio to Moundsville, West Virginia had to change the clock no less than 7 times in 40 miles. Daylight savings once again spread throughout Europe with the outbreak of World War II. As the Nazis began invading and occupying countries such as Poland and Denmark, changing the clocks was one of their enforced rules. In the Netherlands, they moved the clock time forward by 1 hour and 40 minutes, bringing it in line with Central European summertime. However, the Dutch didn't change the clocks back in the fall and remained on DST year-round until 1942. After 1942, the Dutch adopted the twice-yearly clock change, but only for 3 years before abolishing it. In Britain, where they had continued to practice DST, they doubled down, changing the clocks to 1 hour ahead of Greenwich Mean Time in the winter and 2 hours ahead in the summer to try and increase productivity. In America, Franklin Roosevelt enacted a year-round DST after the attack on Pearl Harbor. After the war, many countries kept DST in an effort to conserve fuel needed to rebuild their nations. Still, later, a host of European countries, including France and Italy, repealed the measures as they were an uncomfortable reminder of the war. In America, ongoing confusion led to Lyndon B. Johnson signing the 1966 Uniform Time Act, the first peacetime DST law in the U.S. It stated that states could adopt DST or opt out, but should they choose to use the system, it would be observed for 6 months of the year before returning to standard time for 6 months. Between 1968 and 1971, Britain tried sticking to DST all year round, but having an extra hour of darkness in the mornings during winter proved deeply unpopular. During the 1970s, another global crisis led to the majority of European countries reintroducing DST. In 1973, Richard Nixon tried to call for year-round daylight savings time, but it was as disliked as it was in the UK. As energy prices shot up worldwide due to the oil crisis, Europe was again changing its clocks by the end of the 1970s. In 1986, the US extended their DST months to 7, but it was no longer about saving money, but making money. The golf industry and manufacturers of barbecue equipment claimed that the extra month was worth between $200 million and $400 million in sales. In 1996, the European Union standardized the DST schedule. It made it what it is today, with all the countries in the European Economic Area, including Switzerland but with the exception of Iceland, changing their clocks to 0100 UTC on the last Sunday of March and the last Sunday of October. In 2005, the US extended its summer season again, observing 8 months of daylight savings time. Since its conception, the peacetime use of DST has been in question, as the pros don't seem to outweigh the cons. In general, later evenings in the summer seem to help retail, sports, and tourism, but harm agricultural and mail delivery workers. Claims that DST reduces energy usage, traffic accidents, and outdoor crimes have never been completely proven. In America, some studies have shown that energy costs rise due to DST due to increased air conditioning use. Not only are there not many quantifiable bonuses of DST, but a Finnish medical study also suggested that changing the clocks disrupts the body's circadian rhythms, which may lead to strokes. In 2019, the European Parliament voted in favor of removing DST from the EU, with each member state having to decide whether to remain on summer or winter time permanently. Obviously, the events of 2020 put that decision on the back burner, and plans have not yet been set in motion. The future of daylight savings time remains uncertain, and only about a third of the world's countries still use DST. It is most common in Europe, but it is also practiced in North America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Egypt, and parts of the Middle East. So, what do you think? Is daylight savings worth observing? Let us know in the comments below. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about history, check out our Captivating History book series. They're available as ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.